Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Tetracast, RPG Site's weekly podcast. I'm your host, Brian Vitale. Joining me, we've got Josh Torres,
Guys, I think Valve hates me.
Adam Vitale,
Hello.
James Glazio,
Hey, folks.
and Chao Minwoo.
What did you do to him, Josh?
That's a good question. So as people know, this past week the Steam controller orders went up, and that was a whole ordeal in itself, where people had to go spam a continue button at their payment process to hopefully get through and put in their payment info and get that all processed. So a good chunk of people were able to get through. A lot of people were able to not get through, and they ran out of stock pretty fast in that initial wave, like within half an hour or so. And then like the next day or so, they had the whole another order process to put up reservations for people who do want to get in an order, but will be like a sort of like on a wait list sort of deal, because obviously the demand for the Steam controller was way higher than Valve expected on it. And people who put in that initial order, the approximate delivery time on their timetable was like initially was like 2 to 3 days, and then that got bumped to like 5 to 6 business days and stuff. And basically, after you put in an order, you can track the shipment of like where your order is at in terms of like getting it serviced and the process through like your view purchase history on Steam. And it just felt like everyone except me were getting their orders getting processed. It felt like Valve left me behind. They forgot that I put in an order, and people were like already sharing like within 2 to 3 days after that initial order day. They're like, I already got a tracking number. And I'm like, they're still packaging my items. It feels like everyone got their stuff. Either they got a tracking number or some of them already have it with them. Like I have a personal friend of mine who already has his, that he got it yesterday on Friday, and Zach Reese, alumni of the site, also got his yesterday on Friday as well. And I was talking to Zach about like just general his initial impressions on that on the Discord, and then my order finally was remembered as of like Friday afternoon at 4:30 p.m. They're like, oh yeah, we'll put this. We're finally picking up your order with this carrier, and you'll have it by next Wednesday. That's what it says on the tracking page. We'll see. Fingers crossed. But like before that whole ordeal, before I got that status update, I was just like, I think I seriously thought, I was like, I think Valve hates me. I think Gaben just somehow became public enemy number one in his eyes, and I felt like the only way that Valve could make amends is one out of two ways: either Gaben personally delivers a Steam controller to my door, and I'm like, oh my god, this is the best day of my life,
He pulls up his yacht.
or or Valve gives you one of those Steam accounts that gets every game past, present, and future. I felt like that was the only way they would be able to make amends to me about this whole stressful ordeal. It was that's basically my story with the Steam controller. Did anyone else here was able to put an order on that?
I'm interested, but by the time I got to it, it was sold out. But I'll get it eventually. Same thing happened with the Steam Deck. I got one eventually, so I can be patient.
I'll buy one eventually, but I think the price is a little steep for Canadians. It's like $150. I was like, I'll think about it. $150 is a bit much.
Yeah,
That's a lot.
Yeah, like I hopefully it's good. Like there's a lot of positive impressions about it. I was like, I'll just take the plunge, because I do use my Steam Deck a lot these days. I did, and having that just be on the desk while I play with the controller seems nice. I don't know if I get to do it on my main desktop on PC or for desktop usage. I don't know yet, because I also have a separate controller, like a GameSir controller, that will eventually come here. That like its MSRP was $20, but that it was the it was the Mena RD custom controller from GameSir. And people know Mena RD is a very talented fighting game player, Street Fighter 6 uh, player. And I only like I'm not really interested because of the player. Like I respect Menardi, he's very, very, very good at Street Fighter 6, but I mainly did it because it was a very low MSRP of like $20. I was like, and the controller I've been using up to this point on PC has been this ancient DualShock 4 with a very finicky mini USB cable, and it still works. I just have been kind of dragging my feet on getting it replaced. Apparently, the GameSir controllers are pretty solid.
I have an Xbox Elite controller, which are notorious for having quality issues. So I have had to replace it a few times, but the one I have now works great. Like I finally got one that was like, whatever the comparable like Silicon Lottery is only for controllers. But I mean that just means it's just like worn to shit. Like it's like all beat up and like it's interesting because it's like I don't think I treat my controller, terribly. It always goes in the same spot when I use it, but just over time, you can tell it's used. It's a little bit worn. The grips are well loved. So I'm kind of looking at, all right, what could I replace this with? Because I do like the Elite controller, but you have like an 80% chance of getting one that's going to die on you because their quality control is not great. So eventually I'll get a Steam controller. Also, just programming note I didn't mention at the top. Mikhail, who normally records this with us in the middle of the night in his area, has to get up early, so he's sleeping. Presumably, maybe he'll show up, but he's asleep for a family event in the morning. So we'll catch up with him next week. So yeah, thank you for covering on the podcast last week, and I was not here. I was out camping just with some friends, so I got some sun. Even though it was like the first weekend in May, it did snow here in the Southwest, so that was kind of interesting. But I'd rather it be like chilly than like 90 degrees and miserable and dry. So it was an okay time. I saw that you talked about NTE and James's experience with the Fan Fest and the new Final Fantasy expansion and all that. So
Yeah.
this week I'm looking kind of at the rundown here. It kind of feels like we're trying to tie up loose ends. We got a couple of different things where we've maybe started discussion in previous weeks, and now we're kind of looping back to them, or we've got games that have had some updates that we want to make sure we touch on before new games release, and then a few kind of like there's no theme that I can find here to like all the news stories. We have some things about hardware pricing. We have things about studios attempting to be sold, and it's kind of all over the place. So we're going to touch on a few different areas this week. It seems like listed first. I guess I'm up looking at this. Speaking about one of those games that has had an update recently, and we might touch back on this later potentially because I know Mikhail has been playing it as well. But I have just recently finished last night the Diablo 4 Lord of Hatred expansion, and I did also touch on Diablo 4 the base game and the Vessel of Hatred expansion when those released. So Mikhail did write up like a review in progress, which I presume he's going to follow up on as soon as he like touches more of the end game or other things he wanted to make sure he finished up before finalizing his thoughts. My thoughts on Diablo 4, like I thought the base game was fine, and I thought Vessel of Hatred was really forgettable. So I really kind of went into Lord of Hatred kind of very much in like an obligatory sense, like, oh, I better see where they take this sort of thing. Like I want to be able to at least speak to it, at some level of, I witnessed it for myself and I formed my own opinion on it. I will say, just to lead off the discussion, is that I ended up liking it more than I thought I would. Like I thought that this was an improvement over Vessel of Hatred by a lot. It made me more interested to actually potentially try to like see how far I can get in the end game or do some of the dungeon grinds, see how strong I can make my characters, which is the exact opposite feeling that I had with Vessel of Hatred. As soon as I finished the campaign there, I was like, all right, uninstall, wait for the next thing. I had no interest in it. So it did do that one thing. I will say I saw Josh, you talking about this a little bit in the Discord about some friends who were playing it, and then I was talking about it with Adam. In terms of I played a little bit of Diablo before the expansion released, just to make sure my gear was in order and kind of remember how to play and like, all right, what was I working on? What's my build like? And I knew this would happen, but I didn't realize it would happen to the extent that it did. When I logged in after the Lord of Hatred expansion, like they reset everything, which I knew was going to happen. But not only that, but my gear like didn't make sense. Like all of the mods were like shifted around. I could not parse like what in the world like was going on, because I'm like, why do I have that aspect on my gear? What is that? Like, oh, I guess they deleted one. It's no longer in the list of possible aspects. And the gear system, I'm not going to go into detail, but there's like tempers and aspects and that. There's different things you can like tier up how your gear works, but it was completely different, and my build basically no longer worked at all. So I had to spend like an hour or two like figuring out what the hell I was doing, read through the skill tree and all that stuff. And it was one of those things where half of my mind I was like, okay, they've raised the level cap, they've rebalanced things, I get it. But other half was like, man, this is really frustrating. Like, can I even do this anymore? Like, did they just move where I get that bonus? Like, is it a trait now and not on the gear, or is it just completely gone? And trying to look up information online is difficult because every single website and wiki has like information dated to different like eras of the game. So there's like, where do I figure out like what is true anymore and what is not? So I
Yeah,
ended up kind of having to reshuffle my build. And yeah, go ahead.
it's tough with like how modern the philosophy of modern ARPGs were. They've kind of had they've kind of had this design philosophy that it's tough to adapt to if you're not used to it. Especially like I mean, Path of Exile players are very used to it in the sense that like in between each season they basically make a new character as a new season or league starts in that regard, because like a lot of mechanics and balance changes and stuff changes in between each league because there's a gimmick. So like kind of they wipe the slate clean in terms of like you're starting a new character for that league to engage with what the new gimmick or mechanic they're introducing in there. And then there's some other ARPGs that try to split the difference where you get that, but you can also like you experience continue with the character that you built up. But if you weren't super keeping up with how the game has changed like in between each patch or each league up until that point, if you were just hands off for months, you get into that situation where yes, you could continue with the same character, but don't expect them to be as where you left them off because of them being always online. That means that they are subjected to the whims of these balance and mechanic changes over time, and there's no easy way to like kind of tell people who, like in your case, came back to play it after many months. Like there's no in-game catch-up tooltip or whatever, because how do you convey that to player? Because it's a case-by-case scenario on what kind of character and build they were going for. You're not going to have like like a PowerPoint presentation tailored to you. It's like, this is what we changed and this is where things are now. So it's hard to. I wonder how it feels like no ARPG developers really crack that problem of like, what do we do to help these players onboard them again if they took a break?
So I would have been worse because I did boot up the game and play it for a few days before the expansion launched. So that was able to like at least familiarize myself with the core tenets of the game, rather than have like that months away. It was kind of
Mhm.
like, okay, familiarize myself with the game, and then this week, familiarize myself with the expansion. And I kind of knew some of the balancing would change, but there were some interesting things where, like, I would have a rune on me that said like, I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but it was gonna give me like a necromancer passive for doing a certain thing. I'm like, but I'm a druid. I never equipped this. Why did they sub out like what I had equipped with something for a necromancer? And then I'm a shape-shifting druid, but there's also like storm druids, or because I don't want to get into the weeds, but it was like putting on traits that I had never traded into initially. And what they did with the seasons that I thought was clever was they called, well, maybe not clever, but it worked. Was they called the gear that you had legacy gear. So they basically said like, hey, this gear is no longer balanced to the current game. It's underpowered. You still have it, but you can't upgrade it. You can't modify it. You can't imprint it. It's basically locked in time. So we're encouraging that you replace it, but you still have it. And I kind of wondered, like, they could have done the same thing, I think. Maybe it just didn't work under the hood, where they said, like, hey, you have Vessel of Hatred gear. It's locked in place. It's going to be underpowered. You're going to want to replace it, but at least you still have it. It's still the way you left it. But then, no, that's not what they did. They changed it up. But long story short, I found kind of a new build that worked for me, that was close enough to my old one, and I was able to proceed. So the Diablo, I've always been relatively like, I'm like a casual where I'll play like the story and I'll kind of dip my toes in the post game stuff, but I won't really like go, waist deep into it. So I kind of reminded myself, I watched like the cinematic when they released it. Blizzard still has some of the best like 3D animators in the business, so that was really pretty and technically sound. I thought the story of this expansion, like, it had high production values. It had like a lot of really like enticing moments in terms of like it's hard to describe like story good, believe me, but like it had a lot of moments that I thought the drama was well earned, the voice acting was really well done, the the characters that were returning or newly introduced I thought interacted really well. There was a fair bit of like fan service for like Diablo fans, which I'm not a huge fan. Like, I had to remind myself, like, oh, here's a returning character. When did we last see them? Or like, here's a location that's being referenced. I think that's a Diablo 2 Act 2 location. Like, if you follow Diablo lore at all, even to a casual extent, there's plenty of callbacks that are like, I think they're fun and they're like well earned. They're not like cynical. It's not just like, remember this. Um, so there's a big sense of finality here as well. It feels like this is, there's not going to be another expansion after this. And if not saying there couldn't be, but, or I'm not even sure what the developers have said on record, but it ties up loose ends. I think it escalates to a climax that feels like it's well earned. I don't know. Basically, I enjoyed the expansion, and I'm coming from that saying when I didn't enjoy the base game or the last one nearly as much. So,
Yeah, I think there's a
kudos
big at
kudos
least
to them.
180. Yeah, because from what I remember,
Yes.
like people did not like Vessel of Hatred story. They felt it was very,
No.
yeah, it was very quick and just
Mhm.
it wasn't satisfying. I don't know if it ended off on a cliffhanger, but it definitely left you hanging in terms of like
It wasn't
that's
a
it.
cliffhanger in the traditional sense. It was I remember, there's probably a podcast episode from 2024 where I spoke to this, where the Vessel of Hatred story, the final boss of that, I'm like, all right, time to fight the final oh wait, no, that was it. Like, I thought that was leading to something, and then and then it just kind of ends. Um, I will say that they raised the level cap from like 60 to 70, but it doesn't feel like that really did anything. It felt like completely arbitrary. Like, okay, all my gear is outdated. You get to level 70 in like 90 minutes, and you get all your you can it's very easy to get new top level gear. And obviously not like best in slot gear, but at least gear slated for that level. And it's like, okay, it felt kind of pointless. Like, they could have kept it at 60, and I don't think really much would have changed. The new environment is fine. Like, it's kind of like what you'd expect, where every act of the original game was like a section of the map subdivided into regions. Then they added one with the first expansion, so they do add another one with the second expansion. Um,
Does it stop the
they
open world
they
structure like from the base game where there's still like an like overworld you're running around to get to where you need to?
mhm. It's not really connected to the other parts of the world. Like, it shows up on the same map, but it's an island. Um, and like, once you get there, you can teleport around to the waypoints as you normally would. So it's just another section of the map, kind of defog award
Okay.
to access. So there's nothing there that's like really surprising, but it works fine. They still have like the strongholds that you can um what's you basically unlock them. Events that you can run into. The If you're in the post game, there's still like the hell tides that like show up to make each area temporarily more difficult to traverse, and you get extra bonuses for it. One thing that they did do that I haven't really dealt into too much is, once you've finished the game and you're in the post game, you unlock these things called torment levels. And I hope I get all the details right, but I believe it used to be that it went up to torment level 4, and that was basically like, this is the highest, to the highest level. The enemies give you the most EXP, but they also are the most damaging, most challenging. Previously, I was on torment level 2, so I was like in the end game, but I hadn't quite like completely been on the treadmill for super long. One thing I did like about being in the torment levels was it would automatically salvage any gear that was less than highest rarity. So any like common rare or magic gear, it would just salvage automatically, which was kind of nice. You knew that if anything dropped, it was something that you could probably make use of, or at least get something out of. But they seem to have changed that, where, as far as I can tell, and I haven't found it, they've increased the torment levels up to 12. So if you really like the game, there's a lot of they made the treadmill much longer. Um, but they took out where it automatically salvages lower tier gear. Like, that's just gone now. So now I'm getting like commons and rares and blues, and it's just like, well, I really have no interest in these. I guess the only interest you could possibly have is if it's a new skin, you could pick it up and salvage it. But I don't really care about cosmetics that much. So that doesn't really like. So basically, what I mean is before the expansion, everything that dropped was something I'd want to pick up because it kind of had this auto salvage of lower tier gear. But after the expansion, as far as I can tell, that's gone. Maybe I haven't unlocked it yet, or maybe they pushed it to a later torment level. But now basically I'm getting tons of common or like not rarity stuff that's dropped, and then I'm just kind of ignoring. It's kind of just like it doesn't really impact my enjoyment, but it's like, why did they change this? I don't quite understand the
Yeah,
thought
that's
process
interesting.
there.
I remember my friends talking about this, where there is an in-game loot filter in Diablo 4 now, but apparently, like, that was at the expense of like the auto salvage, and they're like, I'd rather much have it have auto salvage instead of like because they don't give a fuck about the loot filter in Diablo 4 because it's not really as configurable as you want it to be.
Mhm. Yeah, and I
So
looked through the menus and
interesting.
maybe I missed something, but they just changed how it works, and it's like they're allowed to do that, but I liked how it worked before.
Yeah.
No, it's and I don't know if like Diablo spoilers are really that big of concern. Like, I'm trying to like think about what I should mention about the story. So basically, the returning characters are like Lorath is a major character of this
Mhm.
expansion. So if you liked him, he's a major character, and if you didn't like him, he's back. I remember when this game first released, it was at the same time as Final Fantasy 16, and I believe it was the actor's name Ralph Ennison voiced both Sid and Lorath. So like he's a very distinct voice. So he's back, and he's a major character. Neyrel, who is a major character in the other expansions, is not really in this one. And then there are some returning characters from Diablo 3 that are kind of fan servicey, but I'll leave it at that. Um, the expansion does a few interesting things with Lilith, who was the original games or the base games like main antagonist, that I thought were kind of unearned. Uh, not in like a huge, really compromising way, but she's a lesser demon, right? Like, or she's like the daughter of a primeval, and so like she's a bad character, but you're forced to ally with her in the context of the story, at least like in an uneasy alliance sort of way. And basically, what I was thinking was like, all right, she has to betray you. Like that's what demons do. Like, this is gonna lead. Don't do this. Don't make a pact with a demon. That's like fantasy lore 101. Don't do it. But they don't really go anywhere with it. So it's
Okay.
just like, that was an interesting decision to kind of have her like allied with you in some small ways. So I'll leave it at that. Mephisto's the big bad. Like, that's not a surprise. He's been the big bad since the beginning. Um, so it feels earned, though. That, at least that part of the ending, though. I haven't really played with the new characters because I just play on the Eternal. Like, I don't do the season stuff. So they did add like the Paladin and the, what was the other one? I don't
Warlock.
remember.
Warlock.
Was it Warlock? Okay.
Yep.
But yeah, I've just been playing as a druid, so I just continue on my Eternal character. They added like a new like talisman system that basically like another way that you can increase the strength of your character, and it works just fine, and it's something that you can uh engage with to increase your power level more. And then the Horadric cube, which was a big artifact in, I believe, Diablo 2, kind of makes a return both in the narrative as like a gameplay element that you can interact with. So it seems like there's plenty to do after completing the campaign. If you find the game just fun to play, it's the core tenets really haven't changed. If you thought it was kind of more of a grind or a slog, it doesn't feel like that they've completely toppled the table over. It's still the same game at its heart, which kind of like, of course it does. I know I'm not telling you something you probably couldn't have already guessed, but I guess just
Yeah,
final thoughts.
I I
Go
don't
ahead.
know. Like the new classes are interesting because like they offered the Paladin before release. Like if you pre-ordered like the
Yeah.
big like expensive edition of this, from what I understand, you could like unlock the Paladin early. And apparently, like the Paladin up to this release was like, from many people's accounts, like easily the best class in the game. Like it just overpowered like everything. Like it was if you're in it for like pure like performance and DPS stuff, like it seems like Paladin was just a very very popular, overwhelming, like great character or class to play up until Lord of Hatred. So I don't know if they like smoothened it out or it's still pretty good like after Lord of Hatred's launch, but people have been very, I guess, politely say, I guess, divisive over Warlock. It feels like the common understanding from what I get from people who have played Warlock in Lord of Hatred is like it just feels like an incomplete class because it feels like a lot of its toolkit, its moveset feel like they're not as synergistic as like people would hope it could be. Like it feels like a lot of it's like basically the builds for it feels like they don't make a lot of sense in terms of like the power scaling relative to other characters. And there's also the whole thing of even the base some of the base classes. From what I understand, like there's like new talents and pips in the skill trees for the existing characters, but it'll like clearly show you, oh, you can't spec into this because you don't have this expansion. Okay, and that kind of feels bad because, like, if you just only have like maybe the base game or Vessel of Hatred, they're just some paths that will show that you cannot go down because it's this is Lord of Hatred locked in everything.
Yeah,
That's
I saw you
I feel
post that, and I'm kind of like of two minds of it. Like I kind of get it, but I think it was implemented poorly. Like having class abilities behind an expansion is like a prestige class, elite, whatever you want to call it. Like that makes sense. But when it's on the core tree and it's like you can't access this branch of nodes, it just feels bad. Like I'm like so
I feel like
I think it's
don't even like surface it. Maybe I don't know. That's a hard question because I obviously like you do want to have new shiny skills for your existing
right.
characters for
But
expansion. I
when it's
totally
on the core tree or like branched
yeah
off of it, I'm agreeing with you saying like
yeah
it feels bad where it's like you don't have the expansion, so you can't get this talent. But it's like, but this talent, like I'm level 30 and I'm on the core tree. Like I can understand like, oh, okay, you don't get access to the talisman or whatever until they expand. Like that to me is fine. But when it's on the core tree, I'm like, oh, that's an interesting decision. Like
a
that they
weird
did it that way.
memory I have of this, like in terms of like just analog of like feeling and sentiment, is like I remember when I played RuneScape, like on the browser-based RuneScape many years ago, and you remember those gates in RuneScape that you cannot cross if you don't have a paid subscription of
Yep.
it. It's like, oh,
Yep.
you cannot cross here to
You can see players on the other side, like closing
exactly.
by. Like I
Right.
can't be there. Yeah.
That was like the weird thing I thought of when I saw that.
Just two more general comments. One about the expansion and one about just the game in general. The music is excellent. Like I don't remember the music of the base game at all, but there were several moments in the story that like I looked it up. Ted Reedy, I believe, is the composer. He did the base game, Vessel of Hatred. He also did like Dragon Age Inquisition and a few other titles. And it's the the moments feel like they feel it elevates the story. The music's just good. I don't know like how how many ways to say it, but I really like the soundtrack. But then just on the base game, and I don't know if the number of torment levels uh is causing this to be like something I'm noticing more, but it feels like the overworld is like less populated now. And it could just be because I'm only torment level 2, I'm not higher. But if I see like world events, like there's the world bosses, there's the Legion events, like I go to one, I'm like, all right, let me experience what this game has to offer. And I'm just like by myself. And I'm like, oh, there's no one else here. And you can like maybe it's like, well, that's on you. Like you didn't party up with anyone. You could ask in chat to like anyone want to do this, but it just feels like I'm not really running into other players organically at all, which is interesting because I don't remember it feeling like that prior to the expansion, at least not to the same extent. So I'm not sure what's causing that. I'm guessing it's just because most of the end game players are at a higher difficulty tier than I am. But it's still just something I've noticed. So just putting it out there is that if you want to play with other people, it seems like it's not going to happen really organically. You're going to have to actually do like the party finder and do it that way.
Roughly how many
But yeah.
hours is like the main story in this one? Because in comparison to like Vessel of Hatred.
Ooh, good question. Vessel of Hatred, I feel like it's been a few years. I feel like I got it done in like 7 hours. This one felt more like 11. It
Okay.
it felt like 30% or so longer than than Vessel of Hatred.
Okay.
It felt fine, like felt like a good length, like not like super they're dragging their feet or anything like that, but not like that was it. So yeah.
And besides the intro cutscene, are there any other like cinematics that unlock in the main story?
In-engine ones, yes, and they're done pretty well. So they're not as pretty as like the full CG. We spent $1 billion on this on this cinematic to open the expansion, but it kind of goes like the Baldur's Gate 3 route, and I don't remember the base game having quite as much of this. Where you'll obviously the game is normally isometric, but then when a certain big story event happens, it pulls the camera way down into like a more traditional third-person view. Um, and it's in engine and done pretty well, and the mocap is pretty well done for both like the acting as well as like the voice flaps. Um, so, but yeah, in terms of like the full budget cinematics, there's a couple, but like one in the beginning, one in the middle, one in the end.
Okay.
But yeah, presentation values are pretty good. But yeah, well, I guess so. Final thoughts. I thought that the expansion kind of like really helped. It could have made me think that Diablo 4 was like the worst in the series if it followed on the tail of Vessel of Hatred, and it really kind of redeemed it in my eyes. Not like fully and completely, but to a pretty big extent. I thought it was a big improvement. Some interesting changes with the balance, and the end game is just kind of made a lot longer. I haven't really dived into it as much to really know like how I feel about it completely, but they've given you a lot of other things to do if you want to just keep playing after the story. But good expansion. I do recommend it if you're even a casual Diablo fan, just to kind of play through it and see it for yourself.
Do you think they'll make a Diablo 5 within the next 10 years?
Uh, it's kind of interesting because again, my Diablo history is not like it's very vague. I'm trying to think like the three prime evils are Diablo, Baal, and Mephisto. And at this point, I'm like, they're all kind of taken care of, right? Like Diablo is
Yeah.
in 2 and 3, Baal is in 2's expansion. This is Mephisto's game, basically. So I basically am like, who would be the antagonist? But I might be forgetting something about one of those games, because they could obviously write it in however they want.
Yeah.
Um, it does feel like they've kind of like relied on like the cool factor of the Heradrum or whatever for quite a while. And then they've had certain characters return so many times. Like, could they have them return again? Basically, like I'm sure they will, but I just don't know what realm they'll do with it. Like, what are they, there's no like clearly lingering thread to follow. But I guess that's why they have writers to invent one. But eventually, yes, but probably not for several years. That's my guess.
Right.
All right, the second game we're going to be talking about is a game that I don't know much about at all, other than you told me the title, and I pulled it up on Steam to read more about it here. A game that Chow said that he had been playing over the last couple weeks, released in late April. It is called Magical Princess. So I'm kind of looking at this game on Steam to kind of get an idea of what it's about, but I also have Chow here to kind of tee us up about what sort of game this is. So you've been playing Magical Princess for many of us, including myself, that don't know what this is. Can you just tee us up like what this game is and what you felt about it and your general thoughts?
Can I interject really quickly and mention that I did mention this game, I think, on both the previous two podcasts, about its announcement at
Yeah.
My excuse is that I wasn't here last week.
True, but it was shown at not Anime Expo, Indie Live Expo, and as a game that was coming out soon, that there was a lot of excitement for. And then last week it had reached like 100,000 sales or something like that on Steam. There was a bit of excitement for this game, and now Chow is here to tell us all about it.
Yeah, and also an update on that. They on their Steam news page as of today, they have sold they have over 200,000 units, and continues to have a overwhelmingly positive review status on Steam. I guess it's on very positive now that I see it. Like just to tee up people on this, since we mentioned it last week. This was the newly released daughter raising sim has been getting a lot of rave reviews from people who are fans of that genre. It seems to be a genuinely well done one. Now that thank you, Chow, for being able to speak to it now. So tell us about it.
Okay, so this is actually a spin-off of their main game, actually. This company, Magi, however you want to pronounce it, it says they used to make board games, okay? Apparently, this is a spin-off of the board game because their board game's called Magical Bakery, right? And that character is actually even featured in this game. Actually, she's actually one of the main characters, technically, right? But that's getting like too much into weeds of things. So it is considered a raising sim. But I feel like I was playing Tokimeki Memorial. You know what? That's how I feel about playing this game.
That's a totally different genre.
And now I am completely hooked because it's like I basically playing Tokimeki Memorial 5. That's how I feel.
Let's walk through this. So, a typical of raising sims, it's there's a pretty a genre that has a pretty long history, but the basic setup is like you are usually the parent of a girl, and you're raising them up via their stats to be successful in life, and so you kind of go through whether you're teaching them through books or sending them to school. You'll see like different events as like the years pass by, different seasons, and you'll see them grow up essentially. Tokimeki Memorial is definitely not that because it's more of a dating sim with different girls. So what do you mean by like this was you thought this was gonna be a raising sim and that's like Tokimeki Memorial?
You're basically raising the stats of the main character. So start off with the beginning of the game, basically there's a big fantasy story, right? There was some dark mage that summoned all these monsters, and a group of heroes gathered to get rid of them and seal them, right? That's kind of like the lore, right? And your parents happen to be one of those heroes, right? And so this is a part where you play as the childhood of Alice, and you get to hear you get to like tell Alice what to do each day, and that raises her stats, right? There's 4 stats. There is I believe it's vigor,
stamina, intelligence, charm, and what is SEN?
Sensitivity. That's like for their artist talents, and those are the 4 main stats. And it's like the beginning of the game, you're just playing the dad, and eventually, like your wife gets sick, and they decide to move away from town, right? So one of the things that happens in her childhood is that she meets the main character of Magical Bakery, the board game, right?
Okay.
and then it's like obviously she doesn't like. It's like they become good friends, but they said they had to move because the wife is sick, right? And then it's like then it goes to a time skip, and now you play as Alice as like a teenager. She's 16, and now you're basically in this magical academy, and you're not really controlling the dad anymore. Technically, you're just playing as Alice.
So at the beginning, it is like a typical raising sim, but then there's a time skip, and you're the protagonist's perspective is shifted, and you're playing the daughter herself.
Yes, and then it's like so you basically have this stat called energy, and you spend energy to attend like things you want to do, like work, was it like do training or whatever you want to do with it. And there's always a reward of something of doing these things, right? And if you do it like enough, it raises the stat. And then it's like if you work at like I don't know, say the bar or the bakery, they also give you some ingredients, and the ingredients you could use to cook. And I think that's if you cook the food, you get to eat it, and it gives you like a huge stat boost. So there's always like a reward for everything you do, right?
There's a genre that makes like what made Uma Musume so popular is because people like there are certain aspects of the genre that really like make people addicted to it, and that you're kind of speaking to that where like one of the things is like the joy of like kind of maximizing your proficiency in stat boosts and see like kind of working through like what you want to prioritize. And because obviously different events are accessible depending on meeting certain stat thresholds.
Yeah. So there's a rank with your stat as well, and so each time you raise like I don't know like your class rank starts at E, right? So if you like boost up enough stat, it goes to like E plus, and then when you get E plus, you get a skill point, and it looks like you would use it on this skill tree that looks like the sphere grid.
Okay.
And then it's like one of the things that you want to do in this game is to get the nodes that give you like more energy so you could do more activity each day. So it's a very min-max kind of game of what you want to do, right? Obviously, in the first playthrough, you don't know what to expect. So it's like, you don't know what to focus on. It's like, should I spread my stats or should I just focus on one field? And I think the answer is you should focus on one field, I think, personally, so that you can get through some of the challenges. I think the challenges are meant to be like kind of like a bit overtuned for the first run of the game. So at least that's my take. But yeah, it's like, so you also meet like I think it's like 6 different classmates or friends. You can eventually, like, once you know them better, it's like you could go on a date with them. So there's like 2 separate endings of the game. It's like one is your occupation, and the other ending is like the partner that you end up pairing Alice with. You know, because it's all these commands are all basically on Alice's side. So technically, it's a dating sim too, right? I mean, you can ask those friends to go on a dating sim. You could, or on a date. You could even go out to fight monsters in the field if you want to.
Is there like a battle system in that, or
yes,
is that like more of like
there's an RPG battle system in it, and you could. It's actually pretty involved technically, because technically, if I think like at the end of each year, there's something called a some kind of red crimson or something. It's basically, remember how I told you there's a story about a dark mage being sealed up or something like that? I think he's not fully sealed up.
Crimson Moon,
yeah, he's not. Yeah, he's not fully sealed up or something, and he's coming to invade the town each like a certain day of the year or a certain month of the year, right? And you can go outside to fight him, or like fight the monsters to protect the city, or you can choose to do nothing. And if you choose to do nothing, then maybe one of those shops gets destroyed that you always, do for a couple weeks, and they had to like rebuild it. So that's like kind of like what you choose. You can also, there's a second option where you choose to wander during night when everyone's getting attacked. You can choose to like loot the shops.
Oh, I see. Just turn to become a thief.
There's lots of things in this game. Like I forgot, there's a morality stat in this game. So the more, okay, one of the things you can do in this game. Yeah, one of the things you could do during nighttime is like you could work at nighttime, but I don't know why working at nighttime, everything just becomes different. The bar is now a cosplay bar, and the bakery becomes like this shady workshop where it's like, don't let people see what we're making here. It's like, what the fuck is going on at nighttime?
Night businesses, you know? Yeah, how it goes. Bakery by day, shady front by night.
And it's like, it becomes a whole different front during nighttime, and everything just becomes weird at night, and all the things that you do at night just like decreases in morality.
What did the devs mean by this?
And it's like, and then one of my favorite things to do at nighttime is dumpster diving during nighttime, because it's like looking in the trash. You can find some extremely rare loot, but doing that lowers your morality. So it's
wait, why does that lower morale, man? You're trying to get by, all right? You're just trying to make the most. One person's trash is your treasure.
So that's like, I always search the trash during nighttime. That's what my character would be doing.
Okay.
And it's like, and you could do street fights, and doing street fights will let you like earn this separate currency to buy different like weapons and armor and stuff. So I would say there's always like something to do in this game, right?
Okay, yeah. The my perception of this game has like totally flipped because of what you're saying. So like it only looks like a racing sim like at the beginning until like you take control of like the actual. Seems like it is. Would you say the taking control of the daughter is like the bulk of the game, and the raising and the daughter raising sim is like maybe the prologue? Like
yeah, that's basically it. The prologue.
You spend less time. Okay.
The prologue's basically like 10 minutes.
Okay. All right. Sure. Okay. I had no idea that the game was actually like this, and that seems way more robust than what I was initially led to believe.
Yeah, so it's like, that's basically, and then you could like go to like a church and pray to raise your morality back to the good side.
As one does.
Basically, if you have low morality, you can trigger all these like naughty events. Like one of them is like, she hears her friends in danger and they need a lot of money or something, and she basically asked the dad, "Can I borrow a lot of money?" or something, and you tell her no, and then she comes in at night and steal your wallet or something, and then and to give her to a friend to help her, and then later on the friend's like, wait a minute, I think I shouldn't do this, but then the dad's like, wait a minute, where did my money go?
Dang, holy shit.
Like there's like these like naughty event triggers if your morality is low, and apparently if your morality is too high, you never trigger these events. But I guess you also need to like unlock achievements, so you have to play like both ways, right?
Yeah, apparently for like I don't know exactly how true this is, but in the Steam description it mentions like it has like over 50 endings, but who knows like how many of those are like actually like small variants of like existing endings, and how many of those are totally unique ones based on the decisions that you made. But it seems like it has obviously one of the strengths of the genre, and one that's really good at that is like just having, like as you said, a lot of different events and a lot of different endings and outcomes, because this is a game and the genre itself is meant to be replayed again and again and again too.
I beat the game already, but that only took 4 hours to beat it for me, right?
Okay.
And when you beat it, it's like you know that the story, there's a time loop going on, because one of the characters will say this is a fail loop. It's like history will repeat itself, and then you do like a new game plus, and now you have like this node where you like could start out with all these like max, like not like max, but like a huge boost to your start, right? And I think this is like what you need to get like the required stats to ace some of the events, so that you could get like the good ending this time. And I heard you need 3 loops to get the true ending, apparently. Minimum.
Yeah, I mean that's yeah. I mean, all you're saying is like what people's the most popular one of these Uma Musume is like. So like the first one of those, I forget what they're called. Like the journey, like Star Saver calls them journeys. I forgot what Uma Musume calls them. But it's the same thing where like the first run of those is like you're gonna be lacking in a lot of aspects. But as you do more and more of those, like as you raise, in Uma Musume's case, like parents to give you stat boosts for your next run, so it's more easier to meet certain stat thresholds because you have good stat parents to add onto your run right away to meet those stat requirements and thresholds to unlock certain events. And that, which makes sense.
Yeah, and just to make it like different, what's cool about doing like the second loop is like, remember how I said there was a huge time skip?
Yeah.
The prologue actually doesn't start with the dollar raising part. It actually starts with like what happened during that time skip for some reason. It's like trying to like give you clues, like to get the real ending or something. It's like I think that's the cool part about doing a new game plus run, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And apparently the third loop you get 1 extra item that's why it's required to get the real ending. So I don't know. It's like I already find the second loop is pretty interesting that they already like giving you like, oh wait, there's this huge lore dump during this time skip. It doesn't start here. It's like what happened, right?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. Yeah, I've had it on my wish list for a while. I don't know when I'll have time to get around to it, but it's definitely, I have a whole bunch of games on my wish list that I'm just keeping my eye on as one of them. It's that I haven't really done much research until like you've kind of given me the info. It's like, oh, okay, this is definitely way more in depth and way more different than what I thought initially, which is cool.
And it's pretty high production values. I say it's like the game is like fully voiced, like with
right, that's cool.
pretty big Japanese cast. So it's
wow.
So yeah, I would say give it a shot. It's a lot more what I signed up for. It's like I thought it was just like a popular game, but I got my Tokimeki Morio equivalent.
There you go. Sweet.
And the third game we have listed here is another game that we're kind of wrapping back around to because of an update. Josh, it looks like you're going to tell us about the Super Robot Wars Y expansion.
Yeah, this was kind of revealed out of not sort of out of nowhere a few weeks back. They were teasing a live stream that they were gonna do that provided new info on their ongoing mobile game in Japan, along with new info on Super Robot Wars Y. But that live stream got delayed because of I believe a tsunami or typhoon warning in Japan. And they unveiled it. I think like the next day after or sometime later on. But it was a new expansion pass, and very similar to like what they did with Super Robot Wars 30, where the previous Super Robot Wars game, console game, where they had their initial set of DLCs and then they added on a whole new expansion like near the end of that game's like supported lifespan. People didn't see it coming until it hit. And much of the same way, like this one was, I guess, because 30 established it. Like people were like, I wonder if there'd be an expansion to it. And the always the toughest part about this, like talking about these, is the expansions aren't part of the Ultimate Edition. So on top of like what the $90 to $100 or even more that you spent on the Ultimate Edition, if you want the expansion pass, that's a whole separate thing from what's in the Ultimate Edition, which already had like both DLCs on it. So if you already had like all the game's content plus this, you're already racking up quite a bill on this game, which is, I get it. It's tough because the game's premium pricing is because of how many licenses are inherently part of it as well. So on the lead up to this, I didn't actually play through like the two sets of DLC that released after the game launched initially. So I went through those. DLC 1 had like the Big O, Galaxy Cyclone Briger, and Futo PI, which is the Portrait of Kamen Rider Skull, which is like the movie sequel of some Kamen Rider series. I'm not a big Kamen Rider person, so I apologize to anyone who's listening. It's like, what the fuck is he talking about? But this was a pretty cool DLC because it was very Kamen Rider focused. So a lot of Kamen Rider fans internationally on that front, and it was cool to see. Hey, Kamen Rider has been added to Super Robot Wars in a home console title for the first time, and that's pretty cool. I Super Robot Wars has been kind of very loosey goosey on the robot part of its name. Because like it's usually a series about like, hey, giant robots from very well-known anime series coming together on that front, and they've been sort of more loose on that front because at 30 I believe they added Ultraman as part of the DLC on that end too, which is cool to see. So I'm not too miffed about that part of it. So DLC 1, cool for like Kamen Rider fans. I was like, that's pretty neat, sure. And then DLC 2 had more traditional Super War entries in it. You had Steel Jeeg, which is a pretty old, well-known robot series over in Japan. You also have the Brave of Legend, the Garn, which I believe, I'm not exactly sure where the Garn comes from. I know it's part of the Bravery Brave series set of robots, but I'm not too familiar on that front. And then you had like this Getter Robo, the Jet Black Drifters, which is like a spin-off of Getter Robo, but I don't think it's not from an anime series particularly, but it's like an interesting twist that made its debut in mobile games, in mobile SRW games like Cross Omega and DD. And there's like it's a whole separate deal pretty much. So like, but that was okay, sure, why not? But the series lineup for the expansion pass is pretty wild because this is like one of those drops that like has a series list that I don't think anyone saw coming. Like the one of the first ones that like they revealed for this is like Space Runaway Ideon, and that's really exciting because Ideon is like a pretty interesting work from Tomino's repertoire of anime series is directed. And for people who don't know, Tomino's the creator of the Gundam series. So and Ideon is a pretty interesting series in that regard because I won't spoil it. There's like a big twist to it, but the way that it goes is like, hey, it's like this gigantic robot and it's this runaway ship against a lot of enemies throughout that whole series. In that regard, it gets pretty existential throughout it. Then you had returning series like Cross Ange, who's been in a lot of recent console SRW games. and made that series made its debut in SRW X, which was not too long ago. So I was like, okay, like sure, like here we go again, like charging for a series that we like recently was in other entries as a base entry. Sure, like whatever. But then you have like wild ones, like the first one that they showed off in that trailer was like Idol Master Xenoglossia. That's like that's a really 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 wild pull because it is a mid-aughts anime series that is not really connected to the Idol Master series as we know it, because Idol Master is a very 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 popular idol project in Japan that has multiple anime series, multiple units, a lot of like merch, live
Also, not
shows.
something I associate robots with.
Yeah, and it was like it's like Idol Master Xenoglossia is like kind of in its own isolated thing. Even before like the anime really blew up, like it was there like from the very start. And this had like uh characters that are different from they might have like the same name and the same appearance, but the way that they're characterized in that show is very different. And they had different voice actresses from the ones that are like from the mainline series as well. And it was it was a hot mess of a show. I guess I'll put it politely in that regard, where it's very 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 looked down upon from people who like Idol Master as the Idol series, and then it has its own small royal following of like, no, it is really going for something, because it had like Haruka like falling in love with her giant, like kissing. Okay, what are we doing? And like calling it her boyfriend. All right, sure. What are we doing?
Falling in love with her what?
Her giant
Mech?
robot mecha.
Okay.
Yeah. It's, you know. Um Another series that is a personal favorite of mine, that made its debut like 15-ish years ago, called Star Driver. I believe was animated by Bone. Now that I think, I have to look that up. But it is one of those like more niche giant robot series that I wish that it was in a proper SRW title for a long time, and it finally is. I am having a lot of fun um, having that game revisit that series. It is kind of an interesting, because it is technically adding the Star Driver the movie in it, not necessarily the main TV show. And I won't get into like the why it is the movie, but the way that they're including it is like these characters are included. Like it's basically a kind of a blank slate, because the main three characters that are added into Super Robot Wars Y from that series, the events of everything that happened in that series has already happened. So it's kind of like you're in the epilogue section where they've escaped from this island, and all the events that happened in the show already happened in it. So they're kind of just like along for the ride, having a good time in it. So they're not necessarily following the events of the show uh, in the game itself. And then um, for the last series that was added in this expansion was, oh man, I feel bad for this one. It's the Eureka 7 High Evolution movie series in it. Eureka 7, very very beloved mid-aughts or early aughts giant robot show animated by Bones, had like a 50 episode run or so. It was a very like well beloved show. I really like it a lot. It's centered around these two protagonists, Renton and Eureka, and it was filled with robots who could surf in the air. So they had like they have like hoverboards that they ride like surfboards, and like they ride the waves like you would do as a surfboard in the air. Um, a very fun watch. Throughout it.
I've seen that show, one of the few
Yeah.
that I've seen, because it was on broadcast television and with
Yeah.
a questionable English dub. But then I've heard that the follow-up has been reviled for a long time, but I forget why, or if that's true.
Yeah, so every
I
other
watched the sequel too. It's like I think the sequel is yeah.
every other sequel follow up after that main TV series has been looked down upon. Like Eureka 7 Ayo Ao focused on the child of Renton and Eureka, but it was like so far set in the future. Like people just didn't really connect with the main cast. I actually didn't dislike the show. I thought I actually watched that show all the way through, and I was like, it's okay, it's different, but it's not it's obviously doesn't reach the heights of Eureka 7 because you fell in love with those two main characters and the ensemble of that. So it was always going to be hard to follow that up, but I thought it was okay, but nothing really special. Then you have the Eureka 7 High Evolution movies, which are reviled. Which people do not like these movies at all because they kind of deconstruct Eureka 7 in a setting where Renton has passed away and you are just dealing with a Eureka that is all alone, abandoned, is going through an existential crisis pretty much. And it's a very, very depressing the tone of it is very depressing, and that is in stark contrast to the highs of Eureka 7, the main show, where it there was a lot of yes, depressing episodes and a lot of characters had to a lot of growing up to do during it, but it ended off on a pretty hopeful note, pretty much. It was
an optimistic show.
Yeah, it was a nice payoff to the struggles that its characters went through, and like you said,
Bean Family did nothing wrong.
But High Evolution is it kind of flips it on its head as it's very, very depressing. So that being the series that they included in this is rough because it is dealing with a grown-up Eureka and a new character named Iris from those series that are on the run from Dewey, who's the main one of the main antagonists of that main show. So it is it is Iris being very, very whiny because she has the same choral power as Eureka once did, but now that she's lost on that, and Iris just wants to be a kid, and Eureka is you need to she's fed up with this kid because because they're both on the run from this force that definitely wants to capture them and not do great things to them for human experimentation, pretty much. In that regard, so it's very much Eureka being very robotic and depressed and sort of, they added it because they usually add shows that are the most latest entry in a series, pretty much. And Eureka 7 High Evolution is that. It's a wild pick, that's for sure. That's what I'll say about it. But I've not done with the expansion pass yet. I've gotten a few stages into it, and it's the structure of these DLC packs is sort of predictable in the sense that they have to be, where you have the first stage in any of these DLC packs where it briefly shows you some of the new units that you'll be seeing in this, and you get around you can play with them a little bit in this prologue stage, and then after this prologue stage your main warship will show up and say, oh, something happened here, what's going on, and whatever. And then the stage layout will branch between which series do you want to explore first. So do you want to explore the Star Driver one, the Idolmaster one, the Cross Andrew one, or the Eureka 7 High Evolution one? Because these are stages where you can go recruit those characters and their units early on. The only exception to this is the Eureka 7 High Evolution one, because that has a more dire set of circumstances where it'll take some bit of plot development to get them to reluctantly join you eventually. But at first you have Ideon, Idolmaster Xenoglossia, Star Driver, Crossange. Eventually you'll have to complete all of them to proceed the plot forward, but you are given agency over which one you want to do first, because obviously you'll have your favorites among this and you want to recruit these ASAP to start leveling them up and upgrading their mech and just having fun with them because that's your favorite out of those, and so forth. And that's kind of the same way that happens in the other DLC packs as well, where you kind of have agency over which one of those do you want to recruit first into your squad. But I'm interested to see how this plays out. You're really more in it for the character interactions with the new extended cast, who they're gonna interact with in the previous cast, in that regard, because obviously the whole thesis of the Super War series is just highly produced, high budget fan fiction in that regard, where none of these events are canon in their own universes, but you are there just to see what if these characters interacted, like what their chemistry would be, and what sorts of like shenanigans will the how will they do like stupid shenanigans, like a character voicing the same voice actor, like for example, Takuto from Star Driver and Lelouch from Code Geass share the same voice actor, Jun Fukuyama. So I'm sure they'll have some stupid like scene or event where Takuto and Lelouch will interact with each other, and and people will like just make an observation of like how, like, even though they're really different, there's something strangely similar about them because it's like a voice actor joke on that. And they like to do that a lot throughout the series, where like obviously there's gonna be like reused voice actors throughout the games because of what they've, they're very popular and they get to do these roles. So they kind of make some fourth wall breaking gags in that regard. So that, like, it's just I'm interested to see where this game goes going forward, because apparently this might not be it for Super Wars Y. Apparently, people who have already played through the expansion pack and finished it saying they've said like there's not really a sense of finality or like a final boss and its epilogue, which they usually do in these hacks. And people have like data mined and say like there might be another like update, whether it's like a new expansion or an update to the expansion on this, because people have been noticing, hey, there's entries for like some units here that are not in here yet. So who knows? Who knows what the future is? Whether they're gonna add more onto Super Robot Wars Y, or if they're gonna have like a new entry altogether in it, because like the base roster of Super Robot Wars Y has a lot of like new series that have like follow-ups to them, like Witch from Mercury, the Gundam series that made its debut in this game. It only covered season 1, nothing of season 2. So people were like, okay, we want to see season 2 stuff, and is that going to come in the form of an update, like an expansion, or a new entry altogether? Who knows, But there's a lot of participating series that are only presented one half of it. Like Macross Delta, for example, only covers the first movie and not the second sequel movie, which has a whole bunch of stuff to it. So
basically, there's a lot of stuff they could easily pull from if they wanted to continue it.
Absolutely. So I'm having fun with it, like just revisiting the game. Still a very fun game, a very long game, and especially even longer now with all the DLC and expansion packs.
What is your hours?
I'm at over 120 right now.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're getting there. We're getting there. But yeah, that's just kind of the small update to me continuing to play SRW, and I'm being a little bit greedy here. I want to see a new one hopefully get announced and released next year, if not this year. But that's just me, because I always want SRW, and I do. And they did. Why is the new the entry that has them going over to a new engine? I believe this was it Unity? I think they're using for this one now, and that's meant to like speed up development. So obviously they're not gonna stop making SRW, and if they clearly switched over to a new pipeline to hopefully make development quicker in that regard. So we'll see. We'll see.
And then the last game we have to talk about here is another one of mine that I finished up last week. Very quickly touch in here the latest DLC for Starfield, the Terran Armada. So I was gonna talk about this like 3 weeks ago, but I was soft locked because of a like progression bug. And to my knowledge, this has still not been addressed by Bethesda. So there is a Nexus mod that is a fix. It's basically a fan patch to prevent the soft lock for being able to start this DLC. So that's how I played it. Like Diablo, I wish I could say like, wow, this really improved my opinion of the game. It really didn't. So the this is probably going to be pretty short. So the Terran Armada is just like a new set of quests and like features for Starfield. It launched alongside the Free Lanes update, which added cruise mode to the game, which is independent of the paid DLC. So when Starfield first launched, one of the biggest criticisms that was pretty, ubiquitous was that the areas across the the galaxy map felt kind of isolated from each other. You couldn't really go from one to the others without just going through like a hyperspace loading screen. So cruise mode was, I guess, Bethesda's answer to try to answer some of that, where basically you could put your ship in a certain travel mode and go from planet to planet without basically a loading screen. It still didn't prevent you from like being in orbit versus being in atmosphere on a planet is still completely separate. Like there is no seamless landing or taking off from a planet, but it was their attempt to address at least some of that concern. Uh, what the Terran Armada DLC is an additional story pack where you are at the fringe of that kind of like the known galaxy map, and there's this like highly mechanized fleet from the like far reaches of space that is basically causing problems called the Terran Armada. And what you end up learning is that these people are like deserters from the existing factions of like the United Colonies and I think the Free Star Collective. And they basically, tell me if you've heard this before, they feel like humanity is fragmented and they are constantly warring amongst themselves. And this might be not the most charitable interpretation, but it's not really presented well in game. But their solution is that we're going to solve this issue by just making everyone subservient to us. Like we will demand that there be order and that we will be in charge and that will cause peace. And we're just like, okay, that is very fascist and we shouldn't do that. So that's basically the crux of the game, is that you stop them. There is a new companion that you get. It's kind of like a alternate version of like HK-47 from Knights of the Old Republic. He's basically an android, a robot. Like he's actually like a program chip inserted into an Armada robot, and he has thoughts on how do humans differ from robots, how do what are the limitations of each, who should serve the other. And it's kind of presented all very surface level. Like it doesn't go into like anything that's really profound or meaningful.
That sounds like Starfield.
Yeah, and that's kind of like, I wish there was something there to like really dig into, but he's like, I'm frustrated because robots do exactly what they're told, but humans, they can improve. My example is that if you tell a robot, and if you design and tell a robot to jump 500 meters, they will always jump 500 meters. But a human can like train and improve and do better, and that's frustrating when you can't, and things like that. So there's really there's a little bit there to latch onto, but there's just not much. And the main gameplay thing that they added were these incursions, which are basically when the Terran fleet they kind of blockade a section of the map, so you can't grab jump there. You have to use the cruise mode and deal with the threat, either like go onto a base and take out a force and prevent the incursion from happening, or you go onto like a planet surface and you take out a faction of enemies that are serving the Terrans, but they're all just kind of like bite-sized little quests that you do for randomized loot. And I guess that's kind of like, now that I've booted up Starfield a couple of times throughout the year since its launch, both with the Shattered Space and with the Terran Armada, it still just feels like I wish the world felt like it had more handcraftedness to it. Everything is like procedural in a way, and that's not necessarily bad. There are certain games that works with, but when I was doing these incursions, it just felt like you could see the seams, I guess, in terms of how the game was put together, where it's like, this incursion is a space station where the layout is always like this, but sometimes you got to find a key card, or sometimes you got to find a reactor to shut down. And it's almost like a game of Mad Libs, where you can kind of see just like the permutations of, we didn't actually design a single quest. We designed like a series of gears and bolts and nuts and pieces that our quests are going to be comprised of. But once you do a handful of them, you're just like, okay, I've seen this before, I've seen this before, I've seen this before, and there's really just no excitement for it. At least I didn't feel any. So it's pretty short. It didn't really take me too long to beat. It didn't really, unlike Diablo, which added a lot of systems, and maybe comparing these things is not really fair, but they're the two things I played in the last week, so that's basically where my mind is at. Where Diablo said we're adding on to an existing game, and we're changing the way that these progression systems work, and we're adding new ones, and I can kind of see like, yeah, I get it. But for this, they're just like, now there's incursions, which are just more ways um, to have endless tasks to do if you're bored, but they're not exciting, they're not interesting. It's all just loot rolls at the end in a chest and hoping that you get something that's useful, or getting resources that you get. And they did add a few like tiers to weapons that you can use the new X tech to increase their quality and basically have a little less RNG in terms of what your loadout is. But it just didn't feel like it landed where it needed to. It didn't feel, if I didn't feel like rewarded once I got through the end of the DLC. It just felt like, oh, okay, I guess I'm done now. So I wish I had something more positive to say on it. It wasn't something that was absolutely terrible, but it just felt like a chore in terms of like, okay, I guess I'm up to date on Starfield again now. I can uninstall until the next update. It didn't really make me excited to play more or anything like that. So kind of a downer of a check-in on that game that I wish wasn't I wish that wasn't the case, but I can only be honest in terms of what my impression was. So I won't waste anyone's time and leave it at that. Okay, and I think that kind of touches on the games we wanted to touch about this week. So, Diablo, Magical Princess, Super Robot Wars, and Starfield. At least just making sure that we had a chance to look at Magical Princess, and then kind of touching back on the updates to those other three titles. Article shoutouts this week, not quite as many as we do on a typical week, but there's at least a couple here. One of which is that we do finally have a final review for Crimson Desert, which has been a game that we've kind of touched on a few times a month ever since its launch. Scott wrote the review in progress for Crimson Desert when it first launched, and then wrote a final review just this week. The key kind of crux here is that Crimson Desert has been a game that has been updated immensely since its launch at a very frequent high clip. So reviewing it is very interesting because it's a different game now than what it was when it launched, and it's probably going to be a different game in a month than what it is now, which it's not like Crimson Desert invented that problem. That's something that's existed for a while, but it's definitely the most recent high profile case of that phenomenon, and how we kind of manage our expectations around that. But Scott basically just wrote up another follow-up to his thoughts on Crimson Desert, and that's up on the site at rpgsite.net.
I think Crimson Desert is a really like kind of special case in this regard, because when coming out, you thought it was gonna be like, hey, it's a single player game, and it's gonna be the way it is. Like it's not billing itself as a live service game. It's not like Diablo. Yeah. It's not like Diablo where it changes. It doesn't change from like season to season, or like in between leagues and stuff like that. You just thought, hey, it's gonna launch like a standard single player game, like a normal one, and then the way that it's being, it's interesting to call it like its lifespan, but ever since its launch, it has become a different game.
It's kind of like a live service single player game. Interesting. It's like a weird. Yeah, it's a good point.
And in some regard, it's updating at a pace that's faster than some live service games in that regard too. So props to Scott. Like, how do you navigate this field of like, how do you even evaluate it? Because in a certain regard, all the launch day reviews for Crimson Desert are inherently outdated unless you bought a physical disc for that game and never updated it. So it's like,
and that's why we waited a bit to do a full review. And even still, it's like, we know it's going to change some more, but at some point you got to just say, hey, here's a review. We put a number on it, which is really only valid for like right now in terms of, because we can't predict how the game might change.
Exactly.
But we gave it a month to like update and change like the most immediate alterations from launch. And Scott put together a review, but it could change a whole lot by this time next year, where the review might be completely out of date. And it is what it is.
Yeah. What do you do?
And then the other feature that we had up here is one that James put up a couple days ago about the Square Enix concert that you went to. I don't know if when the concert was, and like if you spoke about it last week, or if it was between last week and this week.
It was between the two.
Okay. So yeah, just talk about your time with this the music of Square Enix, Magic, Memories, and Melodies.
Yeah, so I've gone to a couple of Square Enix concerts over the years, mostly like Distant Worlds. I've also done obviously some 14 related concerts and the like. And they've been working with the same group for like 20 years at this point or something like that. And it's really cool. It's really cool always going to these concerts. But what was interesting about this one is that all of their previous concerts have been like dedicated to like one game. That's not the case with this one, where it's like it's not every, but it's like the wider range of Square Enix titles that's represented in a way that they've never really done before. And I was curious about how that would work out in the end. And I think, well, I mean, you can read my feature. It's like, yeah, no, it's awesome. It's totally awesome.
Is it still like Arnie Roth, like directing?
Yes.
So okay, he's been on all of them. The Final Fantasy VII ones, the Distant Worlds ones, the Kingdom Hearts ones, and now this one.
Yeah, it's awesome to hear stuff like Octopath music played live by a full orchestra. Like
that does sound incredible, actually.
Yeah, honestly, what else can you say other than that? Like they played stuff from, and it wasn't just like it. In a way, it feels like this concert is a good kind of barometer for what franchises Square Enix considers to be important, because of like they had like the Mana series represented, they had Chrono represented, overrepresented even though I think part of that is because later this year they're doing a Chrono series, well, a Chrono Trigger specific, Chrono Trigger specific show. So I'd imagine that the reason why it's overrepresented here is that they're probably working on, for example, stuff for Chrono. And so it's like, oh, we've already practiced this, so here's a bunch of that, would be my imagination in regards to that. I could be wrong, but who knows? But yeah, I can't really recommend it enough if you're at all interested in like live orchestras. This was incredible, especially like even for how good these concerts have been historically. This is something else. Definitely can recommend it.
Yeah, no, we've done a few concert reviews on the site. Not a ton, but it's something we have touched on before. And Square Enix almost always puts on an excellent show. There was one right around the time of Final Fantasy VII Remake that was a dud for some strange reason. I don't know why that turned out that way, but went to Distant Worlds, and that's been great. Your reception here seems like very positive, and I know the recent-ish Kingdom Hearts one also had really positive reception. So, really cool experience for anyone who's a fan of those games and those composers. With that, we'll head into the news here. So, like I kind of mentioned at the top, no real theming here in terms of the headlines. So we'll just kind of go into it. The first thing that we have listed here is kind of a general like Nintendo news statement in terms of their hardware pricing. So, not Square Enix, Nintendo has announced that their hardware pricing for the Switch 2, and the Nintendo Switch Online service are increasing in multiple regions: Japan, United States, China, Europe, Canada, others. So for instance, the English price of the Nintendo Switch 2 is increasing from $450 to $500. In Canada, it's from like $630 to $680. And in other regions, they're increasing by similar amounts. Membership prices in Japan for Nintendo Switch Online are increasing by about like 20%. And this is, of course, referring back to the challenging economic, situation that electronic components find themselves in. I guess I'll kind of leave it at that. But And it's not the first time we've seen this. We've seen it for like Sony pricing and other services, just computer hardware in general. We know that Steam pushback. We talked about this controller. A lot of their hardware release plans this year for like the Steam frame and even the controller itself, due to their best laid plans from last year being upended by the economic market of 2026. But now it's touching on Nintendo. So not a surprise. Seems like, buying a Switch 2 day one. It's interesting that we live in a time where you can't expect prices to go down, and I don't know when we could expect prices to go down in terms of bundles or anything like that. It used to be like a foregone conclusion. Like you wouldn't. It's not something you need to think about. Like, yeah, I'll get the Switch 2 once it's cheaper and has something bundled in, and I can save a little bit of money, or there's more games released. But now it's kind of like, well, I don't know if you're going to save any money if you wait. I'm not telling you should have to buy it now, but we live in a time where that's just not a foregone conclusion anymore. So, very interesting world we live in at this point.
Yeah, just what can you really say? Like, this is in line with what many other electronics companies have been doing. There's really no word on when things will improve.
Nintendo's even came out and said, "Hey, so this doesn't even fully make up for the difference in cost for us." Basically saying that they might actually be taking a loss on the system even after increasing the price, which is insane.
Yeah. So this might not even be the last time that they're going to increase the price. They can very well increase the price next year again. Who knows?
I think Josh, I'll let you take the next one. I did see this headline and some of the feedback to it. This was a look in at the RGG Studios' new project, Stranger Than Heaven. But I know that I've seen in our Discord and on social media a lot of different kind of flavors of reaction to what was shown here by RGG Studios. So I think I'm gonna let you take point if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. So RGG Studio, shut off their Stranger Than Heaven event at the kind of announced at the last Xbox Direct with developers sort of deal. So this event went down, and they shut off a new trailer and a lot of new info about it. I guess the upfront, the stuff that we already knew about, that this is a story that will take over the place, that will be conducted over 50 years. And the story follows two primary protagonists, Makoto Daito and Yu Shinjo. And the new trailer right away, frame one, already mentions the Tojo clan. So this is pretty much solidifying it as, hey, this is probably a Tojo clan origin story, and the Tojo clan is, as people may not know, is a very prevalent organization in the mainline Yakuza / Like a Dragon games. We don't know exactly if it seems like you could still appreciate the story without having played those games. I think it's far off enough where you won't need to have intimate knowledge over the Yakuza Like a Dragon games, because this is an origin story of an organization in them. But I'm hoping that they won't be so much wink wink nod nod to Yakuza players. Hey, let this breathe as its own story in of itself, and that's what I'm hoping, at least, that you won't need that. But it's a pretty interesting premise in that regard, because from the get go, the premise is Makoto Daito is I think around age 15 at the very beginning of the game, and due to the loss of a family member, he currently lives in America. He actually sneaks on board a ship departing for Japan because he doesn't feel safe staying in America alone, and meets a character smuggler named Orpheus, and meets Yu Shinjo also on that ship. And Orpheus is played by Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg has already been announced as being part of this game, alongside new cast announcements. Aside from Snoop Dogg, his son Cordell Brodus is also going to be participating in the game. Very famous songstress Adu will also be in the game as her own character as well, alongside Tori Kelly, Akio Otsuka, And I guess one of the more divisive ones is Bunta Sugawara, who is voiced by Takashi Ukaji. And people may not know Bunta Sugawara is a very famous figure in Japan, but has sadly passed away. He believe passed away around 2014, and he was an actor. So RGG Studio clarified that they got the consensus and agreement from his family to have his likeness be in Stranger Than Heaven. It's like Mifune in the upcoming Onimusha in that regard, as on Capcom's end. But people are still very iffy about having famous figures who have passed away having their likeness be in these newer projects in that regard. I get it, but essentially the whole story is about like the trials and tribulation that both Makoto and Yu are gonna go throughout these 50 years, where they at some point they drift apart but then come together again at some later years, and we don't exactly know the ultimate, obviously what the ultimate resolution of this, but we do know that this will lead into the establishment of the Tojo clan, and it's kind of, I don't know. RGG Studios storytelling is sort of been iffy these past few years. In between like Yakuza 0 Director's Cut and the Yakuza 3 Kiwami in that regard. So when you look at the Makoto, Daito, and Yu Shinjo, you see Daito, Shinjo, Tojo. Maybe that's what they're gonna go for. Who knows? And it's also, I have to imagine this is by coincidence, but it is very weird that you have Makoto and Yu as the protagonist names, and then you have this name Orpheus in that regard. So obviously people are like, is it Persona also? And obviously it's not, but the naming scheme is very, by coincidence, shares a lot of Persona variants, where Makoto and Yu are the quote-unquote the canon names of the Persona 3 and 4 protagonists, and Orpheus obviously is the starting persona in Persona 3 as well. They also showed they went a lot into like the story details and the participating cast throughout this. I think one of the more interesting things about this game is it won't have a distinct, hey, all Japanese dialogue, all English dialogue voice tracks. It is a unified voice track in which the characters themselves and the story itself will have the characters be speaking English and Japanese organically with the participating cast in the game. So it is a unified voice cast in that regard, and there's no way to toggle like having one language over the other. It is both. They will employ both English and Japanese.
I'm trying to
Throughout
remember
the game
how
itself.
Infinite Wealth did it, because it was kind of like, remind me if I get this wrong. If you picked Japanese, then some of the language would still be in English if the character or the location made sense. Versus if you picked the English track, it was just all in English. Like,
You think that's the case? Yeah, because I played that in Japanese, and you definitely had some characters speaking English still, but like obviously like you go to Hawaii, there some of the Americans still spoke English in that regard,
mm,
but then you had like Bryce try to speak in English, but like
that was
obviously
an interesting decision
yeah.
where it felt like it was a character who was supposed to be from Hawaii speaking English, but it was a Japanese actor speaking English. So,
Yeah, Faria tried to speak in, yeah, like he did speak in English and spoke like as well as he could. Obviously, Faria
yeah,
since then has his own like scandals exposed and sort of like not in a great um
mm.
reputationally in the
I
West
actually did
at
not know
least.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
This
has
is
had
a
his own
different
sort of.
studio entirely, but I played like Rise of the Ronin in Japanese. But then you kind of ran into a weird like situation where like these British soldiers or English soldiers would be like speaking to each other in like perfect Japanese. It's like, I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah. That
like
was
that feels a
odd.
little weird.
Yeah. So I think that is one of the more interesting things about Stranger Than Heaven. It is like pushing for this international cast that is having this whole like the only one voice track is available, and you cannot. There's no way to like kind of switch it in that regard. Because that is
I
part of
like
the
it, I think.
story. Yeah, I think I like it too. They also went into some of the combat system where it does have like non-conventional combat controls, where they describe it as like your trigger buttons, both of your shoulder buttons, dictate like one half of like the your character's body. So like the LB and LT is like for left punch and left kick, and then RB/RT is right punch, right kick. So it is like sort of like limb-based combat, like Tekken in that regard. But that does make me interested because I do like non-conventional control schemes for interfacing with the game. I wish more games sort of return to that, like more experimental control scheme, in that regard, and not just like the standardized, homogenized like square button for light attacks, triangle for heavy attacks. Like a lot of other games, which is fine, but I do like sort of like the more shakeups in that regard. And of course, you do interface with the environment. Context sensitive stuff where you see like your dude picking up stuff and bashing them over the head with whatever he finds in the environment, in that regard. But they didn't go too much into the gameplay. They really wanted to share like the story and the casting of the game, and I think they're going to go more into gameplay as the game in the lead up of the game. They didn't mention a release date, but they did say it'll launch this winter for PS5, Xbox, and PC. But all we have is this winter in that regard, so no date. So it's one of those things that like I'm really interested and fascinated by like what they're doing with Stranger Than Heaven. But there's also this sort of muck that we've spoken about the RGG studio with a lot of missteps, especially what they did with Yakuza 3 Kiwami, as we went over that with Ashley Schofield several weeks back when that game came out, and also a lot of things that we didn't like with Yakuza 0 Director's Cut. The retconning of like established characters' deaths and all that sort of stuff. But that's not even just that. Obviously, the problems with that extend just beyond like simple retconning, where like I don't want to. I'm not going to go bring it up.
It's interesting though, because like a handful of years ago, not that long ago, like when Judgment and Lost Judgment were coming out, like it felt like a real success for RGG to like have like a connected IP, but something that was not too like wink wink nudge nudge to the current IP, and something that people could jump in and enjoy and see like what sort of games the studio makes without any of that like baggage. But now it's like after recent years, it's like I hope they can kind of accomplish the same thing here, but I'm just a little bit more skeptical. And it's just interesting to compare the
healthy skepticism that never hurt anybody. And I felt like I said, like a lot of very very talented folks work under RGG Studio, and their production pipeline is miraculous in this day and age. As they've shared how they've been the process of consistently pumping out like games at a pretty consistent time frame. So we'll see. I don't know. And also the theme song for this game is done by 4 artists. It is Snoop Dogg, Adu, Tori Kelly, and Satoshi Fujihara, and they lend their talents all in one track for the theme song for this game. It's a pretty damn strong theme song. Pretty cool in that regard. So hoping for the best. Very interested in the game, and interested to see like more on the gameplay front, what they'll do. I really hope it doesn't turn into like, oh, we'll see. This is the origin story of like Kiryu's dad, or we'll see young, Kazama or whatever. In that regard, because Kazama, I guess I should remind people that Kazama is not biologically Kiryu's dad. So very distinct, different characters in that regard. But I really hope it doesn't like get tangled up in that nonsense. And it's just like, hey, like have the Tojo clan's origins, but don't be beholden to like referencing a lot of like existing characters in the mainline. Like, I really wanted this to be like its own different thing away from the mainline series altogether, but here we are. So what's the next scope?
Yeah, okay. if it's not going to be something completely independent, hopefully it's just tactfully related. And if not that, hopefully it's not too over referential. There's tears.
As we continue, we just move the goalposts on our copium. So we'll see. Yeah, because like we've seen the most recent showings of RGG's studio storytelling efforts have been
interesting.
Not even interesting, just like disappointing. Downright disappointing. But yeah, we'll see. But Stranger Than Heaven is. I'm very interested. Like I'm hooked in what they're showing.
This is a headline that's just a release date announcement, but one that I know a handful of people have been excited about for a while. Mina the Hollower, the long in development new IP from Yacht Club Games of Shovel Knight fame, is finally releasing on all platforms: Nintendo Switch, Switch 2, PC, PlayStation, and Xbox at the end of the month on May 29th. So we'll finally have a look in at that project in just a few weeks.
Yeah, good that they finally have a release date after all this time, and it's kind of sneaking up, like you said, like not too far away. But it was odd to me that like they announced Going Gold before sharing the release date. In that regard.
And then I think the first release date that I saw was from like Jason Schreier's like
Yeah.
account. It was just like, oh, that's a new strategy. Like we're gonna have him do our release date, and obviously they followed up right after the fact. But it was just interesting. Like, oh, that's how we're hearing about this. Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's kind of curious that they chose to like kind of share this release date separate from like any other like live stream or event or indie event or whatever. It's just like it's its own separate thing that they just chose to announce independently away from like any other event in that regard. So hopefully this gets in front of everyone's eyes and ears, and hopefully it does well in this regard because the studio really needs this to be a big hit. And it's good that it's like being priced at $20, so like it's not a big ask in terms of like it's not like a full $60 or $70 game.
And then this is a little bit more like business news here that is interesting to have seen this unfold over the week. So I think I have everything here, but please interject if I'm missing a nugget. So this is about Atari, Drecom, and the Wizardry series, like the very formative, long running series that kind of laid the foundation for many, I would say RPGs, but like, dungeon crawlers, other genres for, initially starting over 40 years ago. So I believe this is the order of events. Atari, which is now like a title owned by like a French holding company, not the original Atari from like California from like the 80s, stated that they now have the rights to the first 5 Wizardry games, including like plans for remasters and new releases. And then in our post on the website we list which the 5 subtitles of Wizardries 1 through 5, while Drecom would own Wizardries 6, 7, and 8. However, Drecom has followed up saying media outlets have reported that Atari has acquired the rights to Wizardry. However, no such fact exists. Our company has no intention of selling the trademarks to Wizardry that we hold. So basically, Drecom said no, they didn't. Atari said yes, we did. So that's kind of where that's the last update that I found, is that that they're both claiming that they have the rights to Wizardries 1 through 5, and I have not seen any sort of resolution to that fact. So very interesting, and I don't know like where it goes from there in terms of if one of them attempts to release a game, is the other one going to like try to take some legal action to force it to be delisted, or to have some sort of ownership of the publishing rights, or what. But it's weird to see this happen because I don't know if I have like an analog of having seen this exact situation happen before, but I'm sure we'll see some news as their lawyers, I presume, try to tidy this up. But we'll keep in touch if any resolution comes through.
So as of the moment, like it's still kind of up in the air what's actually the truth. But as far as we understand it, Atari, I don't know. Like you said, as far as I know, like Atari technically has it, but Drecom has interjected saying they don't. What?
So I'm looking at a post from Rock Paper Shotgun, who is of course just reporting on this. And this is a tiny update where Rock Paper Shotgun says, Atari says they did this, and here's the response from Drecom saying, "Nuh-uh." Atari has responded saying, and this is the full quote: "Atari have acquired the rights to the first 5 games." So they're just saying, "Nuh-uh, nuh-uh." Like, so I don't know. It's just weird, interesting, and we'll see if RPS or any other outlet gets a little bit more details about what's exactly going on. But as of right now, they're both claiming to have rights.
I dare, like, whatever happens in this whole ordeal, I dare someone to re-release Wizardry 4. I double dare them. Wizardry 4 is an evil game, and I would love to see that in the hands of more people. Because Wizardry 4 is basically the inverse of Wizardry, where you start at the bottom of, like, I think 10 level dungeon, and you play as the antagonist of the first Wizardry game. You play as, like, the evil wizard that's imprisoned at the bottom of the dungeon. So you
Interesting.
have to make your way up, and the way that the game does its mechanics is fucking wild and punishing and crazy. It is an evil game.
A few trailers for some upcoming games. We have another quick look in for the Wizards of the Coast published space RPG Exodus. So these aren't really trailers. They're more like short little gameplay snippets. We've seen this before where it's like a press release. And as they describe a specific type of gameplay or a specific aspect of the game, they have like 60 seconds of footage. Like, here's a dialogue tree. Here's traversing the world. Here's just some vistas. Here's how stealth works. So it looks like Adam put together basically all of these little bite-sized gameplay snippets onto an update for Exodus, which we still don't really have much in terms of like a release window for, other than that it's planned for next year. But at least some more, like, it's starting to look like a real video game.
Yeah, I actually do kind of applaud them for this, because we kind of whined about it on this podcast, like, for years. Like, they announced it, and then for maybe like 2 whole years, they basically didn't show any gameplay. And basically they heard the complaints, not just from us, of course, and we're like, all right, you want gameplay, we're going to show you just a little bit every single week. And that's what they're doing. So like you said, it does actually look like a real video game now. And like, one thing that's, if you want to really get into like the lore and the world of this universe, like those are the things they've already established a lot. So I'm sure you can read a bunch into that if you care to. But like, for someone like me who doesn't really like diving into that sort of stuff until like the game is out, looking at these gameplay clips, like, there's a couple of interesting things. Like, they show, like, when they introduce how dialogue works, they show like one of the characters in the game, and she's like a blind mechanic. I don't know if she's a mechanic, but she's like a blind character that you interact with. And it's like, oh, that's kind of interesting, having one of your companions being like, well, I can't see like you normally can see, but I can still like interact with the world in, such and such a way. So it's kind of interesting to kind of see these sort of updates to how they're, what the game actually is. And they're planning for like a big, more like showcase kind of gameplay reveal this summer, with these little like snippet reveals up to that point.
We also got an update for, and I know we're gonna have a few opinions on this. So there was a Nason Direct or Connect this last week, and one of the games that they showcased was the next title from Midgar Studio, from behind Edge of Eternity. They showed off Edge of Memories, a gameplay overview trailer about their upcoming game that's releasing this year, uh, shown at the Nason Direct. But then, like, the day after, there was a headline from a French outlet. I have the link here from uh, Pivoine Avocats. I don't know if they're the original one, but stating that Midgar Studio is effectively up for sale. Nissan is basically shopping them around for a buyer, which is what they tried to do with Spiders before they shut down Spiders like a week ago. Of course, the developer behind like Greedfall and Steel Rising. So this is, again, it's just like Nissan being like, maybe this is too emotionally charged, but like the shittiest publisher in existence right now. Like, I don't want to just like come out here with my full like emotional response, but it's just like, are you kidding me? Like, I don't know.
Well,
I read this headline.
Here's the thing. You're saying they're the shittiest publisher in existence. What's happening is that they're the shittiest publisher in non-existence. That's why they're trying to sell all their studios. They don't exist anymore. They're bankrupt. They're selling everything.
Yeah.
And so like Nacon went on like an acquisition spree in like 2018 to 2021 where they acquired mostly French studios like Spiders, like Midgar Studio, and Echo Software and a bunch of others. And, like, you know, it seemed like they're trying to be, like a French powerhouse publisher, picking up all these kind of relatively small or medium-sized French studios. And I don't think that's worked out because, they've Spiders they tried to sell, they couldn't sell it, and like, okay, we're just liquidating them. They're gone. There's another studio called Kyloton who's done like a bunch of the racing stuff. I might have mispronounced it. Sorry. That's been like they still exist, but they've been like gutted. Like 80% of their workforce is gone, and I think like the game that they were working on has been transferred over to a different studio. And then now we have Midgar Studio, whose game is like it's like a mature game in development. Like it's not just started. It's like this game looks like it's supposed to release in the next couple of months here.
It was supposed to come out last year.
Yeah, and I think it's Edge of Memories is supposed to come out like this year. And if I was at that studio, like, what are you supposed to feel right now? Like, you have this game coming out that you've been working on for years that you're probably proud of, I hope, like, and it like, but it's so uncertain. Like, you're going to release that game and, well, there goes my job, like what the future is basically very likely to be not at Nacon or at the studio unless someone like swoops in and picks you up and buys you and, has money. But will that happen?
Yeah.
I don't know. So that's kind of sucks.
Yeah, that's a bizarre situation, man. I mean, and Edge of Memories, like in itself, like the gameplay overview, like looks nice. Like looks pretty solid in what they're working on. But it's just the whole scheduling of this, like between like what happened with Spiders and then announcing this direct like shortly after that announcement, and then now this development of looking to sell, the studio after showing their game off after that direct is like, what are we doing here? What, like, who? The scheduling on this is fucking insane.
I forget the studio's name, but one of Nacon Studios like just released a game called like Styx Blade of Greed or something like that.
Yeah.
Let me look this up. Sorry. And that game just came out like in February or something. I heard it's a pretty decent stealth game. That's developed by Cyanide, which is another Nacon studio. And I don't know if Cyanide has anything else in the works right now. Let me take a look real quick. Not that I can see. So like here's Cyanide Studio owned by Nacon. They don't have a game in development. What's going on with them? They're owned by Nacon, and yeah, like it's very weird. You're owned the studio that owns you, like the publisher that owns you, has no money, is basically filing for bankruptcy or insolvency and going through restructuring. And I don't know how French courts work, but what do you do if you're in that position?
Good question.
It's a little bit heartening to read the comments on this Nacon Connect, and people are like, I would love a Steel Rising 2, but that studio doesn't exist no more. And then when it's like, be a gamer, it's like, do you mean be unemployed? Like people they're taking their pot shots in the comments. So it's like, even the wider audience of the YouTube comments are noticing that. That's when like, oh, if you've kind of messed up, or your mistakes are being observed by. You don't have to reach far to find out that these business practices are being judged harshly. I guess I'll leave it at that. Hopefully Edge of Memories launches and is a success for Midgar Studio, and that success persists beyond Nacon. I guess that's what we can hope for. So, or Nacon, how to pronounce it. In better news, we have new trailers for the upcoming Granblue Fantasy Relink Endless Ragnarok, which is launching in, I forget the date, early July 9th. So we already knew that the characters Maglielle and Gallanza, who were kind of like mid-antagonists in the original game, are going to be playable in Endless Ragnarok. So we have both English and Japanese trailers introducing those characters and their returning voice actors in Seiyu.
Let's fucking go, Chow.
They're the best characters. I thought they were gonna be like playable as like a DLC in the OG game, but
you're technically right.
Yeah, I mean, after like the boss fights with them, we're like, oh, these characters do really cool playable. These seem to already have move sets and everything, but it was a long, hard road, but here we fucking are. Maglielle is definitely going to be probably my main character. Obviously, kind of long documented this podcast. I really love her Japanese voice, Sayori Hayami. Big fan of her work.
Yeah, I recognize 3 of these 4 voice actors. I don't know Koichi Yamadera for Gallanza, but Sayori Hayami, Crispin Freeman for English Gallanza.
I actually saw someone replying on our thread. This is one of those things I didn't realize, but for like Maglielle's like English voice, like Debbie Derryberry, who's that? Jimmy Neutron.
Jimmy Neutron.
Yeah.
No, she's got a fun voice. She voices a lot of Guild Wars 2 characters, so yeah. She has some range, but yes, one of her voices is Jimmy Neutron.
Yeah, it's a fun cast, but I'm excited, Chow. Jesus Christ, I can't wait to play this expansion.
I still love the lore, and if you love the mobile game, it's like she's basically wielding like I forget what the weapons are called, but they're like superlative weapons or something like that. They're all like whale weapons that you had to like be a massive whale to get, and she has like millions of them.
That's funny. Yeah, her movesets, like her weapons are really cool because she has like a bunch of floating blades that can be formed in different formations. So like at one point, I think she has Gallanza's spear. I think as part that they form into as part of her moveset. I'm very excited to see like what her skills are, like all the different things you can do with her.
I think one of the scenes that people with my friend really laughed at was like when Gallanza, when he like wants Bell, he used like his lance as like a surfboard.
Yeah.
Like, well, see you guys.
Yeah, he fucking flies away because he rides it. It's like a rocket, fucking hoverboard thing that doubles as a spear.
That just makes me think of that Dragon Ball character who throws a log and rides it.
Yeah,
his name is General Tao, something like that.
What is this? July, right? For Endless Ragnarok.
July 9th. Yep. This one did come out with a trailer as well, but an update, a new port for an existing game. Legends of Heroes: Trails from Zero and Trails to Azure are coming to Switch 2 and PlayStation 5 this fall. And the interesting thing here, Mikhail really detailed this out in the news post if you want to get to the nitty gritty. But when these were first officially localized in English, there was a little bit of interesting like console disparity based on versions that were touched up by PH3 versus against versions that hadn't been with like the PlayStation 4.
Yeah, and I remember James got a bunch of shit for this, even though it was like factually true.
True statement.
Yeah. I remember I specifically got shit because I called out NS America for not making it more clearer, and I had some folks at the time, including I had some folks at the time that were like, "Well, it's not Nissa's fault. What if it was just Falcom?" It's like, okay, it still is Nissa's fault for not making it clear. Like, if you were paying attention and looking at literally the 2 like trailers on YouTube at the time, and like looking at the Steam blog post from Durante where he was talking about how it was going to also be in the Switch like all these things are also going to be in the Switch version. There was no talk at PS4. It's like you could figure it out, which is why I looked into it. And it's like, wait a second, they're even showcasing the differences in textures in the 2 different platform trailers. So it's obvious that the PS4 version is just the Kai version, and regardless of who's like to blame for it, NIS America was not making that clear.
Yeah, it was mostly just a PSA, like, hey, Switch version is going to have upgrades and updates that the PS4 version does not. Be aware of this. And then, like, some people were like, how dare you say they're different? Like, but they are. It was very weird.
And I don't know if we got official word that PH3 worked on the PlayStation 5 and Switch 2 versions, but the press release does say that they will have the 4K 120 support, mouse support on Switch 2. Like, it is the upgraded versions, but I don't know if they're just adopting them from the original release or PH3 worked on them specifically. I was trying to look that up as you guys were talking, but I cannot find explicit confirmation that PH3 worked on the Switch 2 and PS5 version directly. But it does have like those updates incorporated.
Yeah.
So they'll launch in fall 2026.
I might actually, since that PS5 version is going to be 4K 120, I might actually get a physical of that since it's both games in one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if those consoles can handle it, man. These are pretty graphically demanding games.
Yeah, I think I might buy the PS5 version. I missed out buying the...
Actually, this is something that's really nice that I just saw in the features, because So despite the fact that at the time I mentioned that there was the difference between the PS4 and the Switch versions, I actually think that I've been a bigger fan of the older textures, even if they were crunchier, because the way they upscaled them on like a Switch and PC, I wasn't actually the biggest fan of in some cases. There's like specific instances where it's like, that doesn't look very good. One of the features of this new release is that you can choose which of the textures you want to use, the original or the upscaled. Perfect. Awesome.
So you got the win-win solution for both. But yeah, I think I'll get the PS5 version. I've never supported the game key card business, so it is how it goes.
With that, we'll go into some sales updates. Pragmata, we talked about a month ago when it first launched, or not a month ago, 3 weeks ago, has reached 2 million copies sold. We got a few financial updates from Nintendo. Pokemon Legends ZA has neared 13 million. It's at 12.8 million copies. The interesting thing here is that it was at 12.3 late last year. So legs of Pokemon ZA in 2026 seem to have, like, it's still a remarkable total, but it was interesting to just compare the April or May 2026 numbers to the end of 2025 numbers, because it seems like the legs in 2026 have kind of died off a little bit. So I guess you can read into that what you will. Also on the Pokemon front, Fire Red and Leaf Green, the versions that were made available on Nintendo Switch eShop, have sold over 4 million copies in 6 weeks.
That's quite a lot for just, basically placing a GBA game on Switch at, $20 or whatever it was. $40? How much were those?
I don't remember.
$20.
Yeah, $40 for both. So, yeah.
And then I think you guys talked about this one last week, but Heroes of Might and Magic Olden Era, which released in early access a couple weeks ago. I remember when it sold 250,000 copies to recoup development costs like within a day. Was excellent news, and they've sold over 650,000 copies total at this point. So on their way to hopefully and likely hitting 1 million. So really good success for that team at
and that's just
Unfrozen.
Early access. That basically, like, if you're that developer working on this game, that's got to be like the opposite of what it feels like to be a Nacon studio right now. Like, hey, we already have this game out. You can buy an early version of it, and like funding for the moment is taken care of, and we can. I'm assuming they can kind of work on this. Getting this game up to 1.0, knowing that they have good feedback and a lot of purchases already. So.
Yeah, and feedback and like has been good. Like it's been well received as well.
Yeah.
So yeah. So awesome success story there. Just a couple of dates just to sort of wrap this up for some release dates. Lumentales, Memories of Trey, which is a creature collecting game from underneath Team 17, is going to launch on Switch and PC at the end of the month on May 26th. We have the release date trailer up on rpgsite.net. The developer is Beehive Studios, which is a fun name for a studio.
Being frank, a lot of these creature collector games, I feel like there's, they kind of blend together for me because there's so many of them, but a lot of them are actually rated pretty well. So like people seem to like them and they seem to be well made.
The Steins Gate reboot launches in Japan on August 20th, including an Xbox release, which is interesting. Xbox, PS5, Switch to PS4 and Switch.
This is the second time they have remade Steins Gate, and they've become exceedingly inefficient at it.
So some background on this. First, the Japanese release, like it will have English traditional Chinese and simplified Chinese language options in that Japanese release. So we're kind of just waiting on, I guess, Spike Chunsoft to announce probably simultaneous release, if that's the case.
Yeah, because Spike Chunsoft is listed as the publisher on Steam.
So we're waiting on that. And then some more details on this, that this will be based on the Steins Gate Elite script, which is substantially shorter than the original Steins Gate. script. So once again, for people who don't remember, Steins Gate Elite is the first remake of Steins Gate, which has like the anime designs on it, and does some cutting of the script in terms of making it more. I don't know. I don't know why they did it. Readable for efficiency's sake, but Reboot seems to either be a modified version of that continues to cut down more on it. That's but it does have the original artist on it instead of having the anime designs. But obviously, Hughes, they've become a better artist over the years. But I think some people do prefer some of the more rougher textured designs in the original release, which is a point of contention. There's been some comparisons over like the original, some of the CG scenes over the original release, over this release.
Remember those?
In that regard, yeah. I don't know. I mean, hopefully it's cool, but it's kind of. I'm not a big fan of the more slimmer script.
Also in release date news, Gothic 3 Classic. This is just kind of tidying it up. We knew it was coming to Switch. We knew it was coming to other consoles. We didn't know if it was at the same time. We've got confirmation that it is. Gothic 3 Classic is going to launch on Nintendo Switch 2, PS5, and Xbox Series on November 24th. And then the last thing I have is for the end of the month, just like what we're looking forward to. I hope I have this right. Adam, May 27th is Dragon Quest Day. Do I have that right?
Yes.
Is that always Dragon Quest Day? Like, is it based on the
I think
date?
so.
Like, okay. So May 27th, Dragon Quest Day, and Square Enix, and it's not uncommon to get announcements on that day. And Yuji Horii is famously, kind of loose-lipped sometimes about saying things when he's not supposed to, sometimes with a wink, sometimes not. I guess he was on a podcast, a Koso Koso broadcast that he has with Shonen Jump, talking about the upcoming Dragon Quest Day, and then spoke basically saying like, I think we'll be able to make an announcement of our next title, which is maybe something like we probably might have been able to expect that anyway. But of course, different outlets have kind of run with this. We have no confirmation of A, something is going to be announced, or B, what it would be. Obviously, Dragon Quest 12 is the one we know they're working on. He has mentioned in the past, Dragon Quest 7 Remaster was released because it was ready prior to the other ones. Like, what do you mean other ones? So maybe we see something in the 4, 5, 6 realm. Like, we don't know what's going to be announced at Dragon Quest Day, but Yuji Horii is kind of getting people's attention on it. So likely to have some sort of announcement for Dragon Quest fans at the end of the month. There, I hope I stated that carefully enough. We don't know what's going to be announced. We don't even know if something's going to be announced, but they're teasing it up that something will likely be announced. So we'll keep our eyes on that.
And the next title slash work could always be a mobile game as well. Even though Smash Bros just came out, you never know. You never know. Sure. I don't know what to expect out of it. Ideally, it'd just be the resurfacing Dragon Quest 12. Who knows? I'd like to see something new in that regard. But if you're gonna show me a new release of Dragon Quest 5 that it doesn't compromise on that makes no compromises from the original game, then I could be on board. But if you're gonna remake Dragon Quest 5 and it has cuts, ooh.
You know what to do. You mail them a katana and say no cuts.
That's right. I mean, I think Japan would respond very negatively if it had cuts, very negatively. But that's
what is their reaction to the 7th Imagine? I mean, I don't know.
I asked Junior about it because he does live in Japan, and they seem to be fairly okay with it in that regard. But I'm not exact. But obviously, there's always a section of the crowd that like is very opposed to the cuts. But I think in terms of like just luring in new fans, they seem to be. But I feel like it leads more positive than negative. But obviously, there is still a negative reaction. That's from what I remember when talking to Junior about it some time ago.
So I'm looking at the schedule for next week to see what we're going to talk about. I'm not 100% sure because we have the back half of May has a handful of things. We've got Zero Parades, we've got Star Bites, we've got Utuara Mono. Yeah, but like next week, I'm looking and it's like Alabaster Dawn's exiting. No, I'd already exited early access.
I can talk about the game that I've been talking that I've been playing. That's still under embargo.
Next
That's
week.
what I can talk about.
All right, you'll be free from the embargo next week, but not at this moment, so you can't tell us what it is. All right. So, but yeah, we have the Crimson Desert review up on the site. We have James's concert impressions from I want to make sure I get the title right here, from Music of Square Enix, Magic Melodies and Memories. Sorry, Magic Memories and Melodies, up on the site as well. All the news and headlines that we talked about are up on our site at rpgsite.net. You can find RPG Site on all the social media channels. Just search for RPG Space Site, and you should be able to find us. Join our Discord, discord.gg/RPG Site. If you listen to this podcast, leave us a like, leave us a rating. We'd like to see those. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Tetracast. Until you hear from us next time, stay safe, take care. We'll talk to y'all later.